ever since I was a kid reading True Detective magazines, which some of you may not remember. I've always seen that the biggest victims in crime always appear to be women. That isn't saying that women are the only victim, but they seem to be the largest among victims. And I have loved the podcast I've listened to about true crime and wanted to participate in those podcasts as well. I did want to add a little bit of change to my podcast, and here's what it is. I'll have scenarios documented, and there'll be clues provided, and it will be up to you based on these clues to decide who the perpetrator is. This is based on serial killer history, and any true crime aficionado who loves to solve crimes may enjoy participating in this. But ultimately, the true reason would be to sharpen your deduction skills, because perpetrators are always sharpening their deduction skills to take on new victims. With that in mind, let's get started. One thing I'd like to add before we do get started is this is going to always be an adult content podcast. And for some adults, this may not be a good podcast for them to listen to either. If this is not the subject matter of your choice, please do not hesitate to skip this video or come back at a later time. Thank you, and let's get into it now. The game is afoot. Okay, dudes and dudettes, cowboys and cowgirls, welcome to the latest episode of True's Clues Crime Scene, and I'm hoping that you are doing well and that you have been cognizant of the true clues around you and keeping yourself well and safe. So with that, let's dig in. This perpetrator was perpetrating his crimes here in Frederick, Colorado. However, not a Colorado native. And this is not unusual, especially in the husband-on-wife crimes here in Colorado. We've had quite a few of them, and a lot of them have gained national attention. And I feel that it deserves a little bit more looking into. This perpetrator did strangle his wife and 2 daughters and ultimately dispose of their bodies in the most horrific fashion. And for that, he got to plead guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder as part of a death plea so that he didn't have to face the death penalty. Although he didn't mind having his family face the death penalty at his own hands, he was too chicken to face the death penalty himself. I'm kind of looking at the information on Wikipedia as I'm covering this with you because it is such a widely covered case and there's just so much information out of there coming out everywhere, and I want to keep to the timeline as things have gone down, and I'm sure there's been a little more update on this information since then as well. The perpetrator and the spouse were from North Carolina and moved here to Colorado. And he had a job in an oil company about an hour away from his house. Lived in a kind of nice neighborhood in a smaller town. And the wife did some kind of home selling product, multi-level marketing through a special company. And August 13th of 2018, she returned from a business trip to Arizona and was driven home by her friend, Nicole. This is probably one of the best friends that she's ever had in the world, because this girl worked it hard for her. I mean, you could see in the videos, she wasn't going to be taking no shit from no Chris. And so she dropped Shanann off, and then when she was supposed to meet up with her the next day, she didn't hear from her. The obstetrics and gynecological department didn't hear from her either, and they never got a response to their text messages. She missed a business meeting. I mean, everything was so uncharacteristic for her that it brought a lot of concern. So her friend called the cops. The cops showed up at the house. It took Chris Watts, the perpetrator, forever to get to the house. He was non-concerned about where she was, even referred to her and the children in a past tense a couple of times, acted very nervous, very guilty. It brought up all kinds of feelings in the cops and in the neighbors and people that had witnessed what was going on, and that just started the whole thing. So eventually he was taken in for questioning by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and they kept him there, and of course, in a regular narcissistic fashion, he blamed who? The wife. Tried to tell the dad that the wife was the one who had offed the kids, and in his rage, he had offed her. Okay, fine, whatever. But then, as it turns out, much later, as he's becoming a star doing all of these interviews, and the pictures for him in the one interview that he does is just simply disgusting. If you see the look in his eyes, how confident he is, how happy he is to have all attention on him, completely classic narcissistic behavior. And another thing, people are like chewing gum to these people, so when they don't want them around, they get rid of them. He had been involved in quite a long-term love affair. Like I said, it's a triangle that one person didn't know about that was going on. Apparently, these two always knew what was going on. The additional person, I even hate to use the name, claimed that they didn't know that he was in an active marriage. But as for me, I would be kind of suspicious unless I was spending time there with both people that lived in the house together that are telling me they're exes to see what is actually going on. The proof is in the pudding, or at least check Facebook. Shanann lived her life on Facebook. She would have seen right away what was going on. I don't believe she checked Facebook right away, but when she did, she kind of stalked her and then started to get a little jealous. So I do believe that when Chris talked negatively about his wife, this woman also engaged in the same type of activity, or snickering along with it, as you can see in some of the text messages that were exchanged between the two of them. But ultimately, she was deemed not guilty. But I will say, if he did really feel like he loved her, what would keep him from taking the fact that she may have been involved or may not have been involved, don't come for me, I don't know, but had she been involved, why wouldn't he keep that secret to himself? Thinking one day he will either get out or he'll die with the secret with him. So eventually he does come forward, and he's writing this letters to this lady who writes a book. Some kind of romantic thing going on between the two of them. She doesn't really put all the information out there, so you can't really clearly see the exchange of information. But you see that they're calling each other kind of romantic names. I think it's simply manipulation for money, as many other people do. But he does finally come out and say that he really did annihilate his family. And he's trying to say he annihilated them because had he never met this other person, that never would have happened. But I bet you he was unhappy with the whole thing for a long time. He may have had a moment of respite where he went ahead and decided, oh, I'm going to try to make it work with my wife, and that's where the pregnancy came in. But ultimately, he decided he wanted none of it. None of the family, none of her controlling the money, none of her life on social media, which I guess he had a real problem with. And he just wanted to run off into the sunset with this new person on horseback, I guess, and everything was going to be fine. How ridiculous is that? I mean, there's been enough national coverage on these type of things that this idiot should have known that he would be far from getting away from it. But true to narcissistic fashion, like gum on the bottom of your shoe, you just clean it off and keep going. So apparently he had attacked Shanann first and got rid of her. And at one point, one of the babies came in. So then that solidified his decision of what he was going to do, get rid of them all. But then if you hear him talk later on, he says when he put him to bed that he was sure that was the last time he was going to put them down, and that would be the last time he had anything to do with them in a lifetime fashion. So the bottom line is he probably had been unhappy in this relationship for a long time, probably just plodding along, just doing his thing, just letting Shanann take control, feeling like he's floating along, because that's what happened when they got together, according to him. She just came and she just took him off the road, like a piece of trash that he is. And then eventually he takes the police and investigators to where he disposed of the bodies in the most horrific fashion for the babies, because there's information to state that the babies were alive until he got to the oil field. And this is according to interviews that he's done. And then he kills one baby while the older child watches in horror, begs him not to do the same thing to her, and he could give a flying shit. She fought with her life. There was just so much evidence in her autopsy that she tried so hard to survive, that poor little baby. But nothing became of it with her. So, eventually he did tell what had happened. And he did express his desire, how he didn't want another baby, although supposedly a boy had been what he wanted all along. So, in essence, he killed 3 children and 1 wife. And felt perfectly okay about it, and may have gotten away with it if it wouldn't have been for this friend Nicole raising Cain about the whole thing. Because after he'd gotten back from the job site, he would have been able to go into the house and get rid of all of this evidence. So now he has this deluded illusion that while he's been in jail, that this third party has been contacting him under an assumed name. I don't know. I don't care. But he's thinking that because of this, he's building up some kind of a case for him to be able to go back to court and maybe get his freedom. Well, I don't think Colorado's going to have any of that, and it'll be a cold day in hell. Just like Scott Peterson is trying to lay foundation that he didn't get a solid court proceedings. There's just so much in that case that's just seems supposed to be deemed coincidental. So, based on that information, I am going to have a live panel discussion here with some girls who are doing in a bad relationship right now. And we're going to discuss some things about why they stay, what the benefits are of getting out. And hopefully that'll be a benefit to you. You'll be interested in hearing what we have to say. We're going to do a little spilling of the wine, having a good time, and discussing online what we think and have come across. So if you have any remarks, please do send them to me. I have my email address out there somewhere. Let me know what you think about it. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast this evening. And I'm not having this one too long because I'm going to have a longer session later when we do the live panel. And I'm hoping that we'll get that done on Sunday. So I'm going to release this edition a little bit early. And thank you for listening. Beware of the true clues around you. Stay real, my peeps. LOL. Have a good day.